And here is part two of my exclusive interview with the Vice President, JD Vance. Karoline Leavitt, I watched her yesterday. I thought she did a great job.
I agree.
And
great job.
I thought A Star Was Born, and it's a very hostile room.
Yes, it was.
As you had your moment with Margaret Brennan, although I don't think she had a very good day over the weekend, my humble opinion. But I watched her with the media, and she was very forceful. And then you turn over to NBC, and everyone from Liberal Joe to Joy Reid to Nicole Wallace and Rachel Maddow, and you know, it's not, they're back to their closing argument in the campaign.
Sure.
Nazi, fascist, racist, Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini. And I'm like, wow, it seems like they haven't learned a thing. But here's my question. If they're going to go there and they're going to make such insane allegations,
sure,
when you're trying to get rid of criminals that have been murdering, raping, and responsible for other crimes, violent crimes against Americans, why are they even in the White House press briefing room? Why?
You know, what was so interesting, just to give some more kudos to Karoline, is she didn't have a massive binder. And she did this incredible briefing with all of the hostile media. And then somebody asked her, where was your binder? And she said, my binder is in my head. And I think there's something very interesting about Donald Trump's approach to governance is he just wants to hire smart, competent people to do the people's business. He's not worried about what you look like, whether you're gay or straight, whether you're black or white. He's just saying, if you're smart and you're loyal to the American people, you can have a place in my administration. I think Karoline really knocked it out of the park. But it does raise an interesting question. I actually think that we are looking very seriously about which reporters show up. Because if you're a reporter, even if you're biased towards the left, absolutely we want to answer your questions. If you're a propagandist for the Democratic Party, then we're going to treat you like a propagandist for the Democratic Party. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think we've already done, again, we're only 8 days into this thing, is you know who, it's not just who's not there, it's also who is present. And Karoline had a lot of new media folks, a lot of young people who represent, I think, the vanguard of news media in this country. She gave Matt Boyle from Breitbart a question yesterday. These are actually some of the people who are driving news in 2025 in America. And I think, frankly, the MSNBCs, the CNNs of the world, they should take the hint. Your viewership is way down. Your ratings are abysmal. Why is it that especially young people are tuning into new media? Maybe it's because instead of engaging in propaganda, the new media is asking real questions. I mean, Joe Rogan, one of the biggest voices in American media now, he was a Bernie bro 8 years ago. This is not like some crazy right-wing guy. This is just a person who's asking questions. And unfortunately, most of the old media, they're just not interested in that.
What I like about him is he's curious.
Yes.
You know, as I listened to them and I watched Selena Gomez, that viral video.
Oh, my Lord.
You know, I'm thinking,
embarrassing.
Now, I've talked to the family, as did President Trump. I know that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did not. I talked to Laken Riley's family.
Yeah.
I talked to Rachel Morin's family, mother of 5.
Yeah.
I talked to Jocelyn Nungary's mother and grandfather. And I'm like, where were the tears when a little 13-year-old girl
Absolutely.
was brutalized and murdered, and all these other Americans murdered and raped and victims of violent crime?
Yeah.
Where were the tears then?
It's a great point, Sean. And there's something very deranged in the mind of the far left in this country, where I really do think that they feel more of a sense of compassion for illegal aliens who have no right to be in this country than they do their fellow citizens. And that really has to change. And you know, when Selena Gomez had her viral moment, and of course there were a lot of other celebrities who weighed in, I had people sending me photos of little kids, sometimes kids the same age as my little children. We've got, of course, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
It was a great scene, by the way. When
Thank you.
Your son's playing with your hair.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But you know, kids similar age to my children who were murdered by criminal aliens in the United States of America. And as an American leader, but also just as an American citizen, your compassion belongs first to your fellow citizens. It doesn't mean you hate people from outside of your own borders, but there's this old school, and I think it's a very Christian concept, by the way, that you love your family, and then you love your neighbor, and then you love your community, and then you love your fellow citizens in your own country, and then after that, you can focus and prioritize the rest of the world. A lot of the far left has completely inverted that. They seem to hate the citizens of their own country and care more about people outside their own borders. That is no way to run a society. And I think the profound difference that Donald Trump brings to the leadership of this country is the simple concept, America first. It doesn't mean you hate anybody else. It means that you have leadership. And President Trump has been very clear about this, that puts the interests of American citizens first. In the same way that the British Prime Minister should care about Brits and the French should care about the French, we have an American president who cares primarily about Americans, and that's a very welcome change.
What is President Xi doing? What is Vladimir Putin
He's looking
doing?
after the Chinese. Putin is looking after the Russians. They're entitled to do that. Thank God we now have an American president who's looking after the citizens of his own country.
I hate to ask this question. I really do. And because of my long-standing friendship with the president.
Sure.
We have had 2 would-be assassins. I read these reports. You would know a lot more about the details than I would.
Of course.
About Iranian assassination squads in the country.
Yep.
You are now, as they say, 1 heartbeat away from the presidency. Do you think about that? I mean, God forbid that moment ever comes, and I mean God forbid.
Yeah, I try not to think about it, Sean. I mean, my attitude is I'm going to do as good of a job as I can for the President of the United States. Part of that, of course, is learning from him and learning about this incredible group of people that we have in the White House. Yeah. And yeah, part of the job is, God forbid, if something terrible happens, I have to step into that role. But I think President Trump is in incredible health. I think that we've got a great situation when it comes to security around the president. And I really do think that he's going to serve 4 years, do a great job, and I'm going to do as good of a job I can for the American people as vice president.
He's very low energy, like Joe.
Oh, my Lord.
North Carolina, Vegas, and California in a day.
Well, and of course, on the phone the whole time, taking calls, you know, making phone calls. The other thing about his energy level is he's extremely accessible, right? And I know it's kind of shocking to the White House press corps, to everybody in Washington, that the president actually is engaged in the people's government. That's, of course, exactly what you want, but it is a very radical departure from the last 4 years.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.